RC from the Mountaintop Joiner Shop here. I was just about to use this Wen oscillating spindle and belt sander to shape these little sapele parts, and I thought this might be a good opportunity to talk about it a little bit. Now, full disclosure, I'm from a hand tool background. I'm not a machine head by any means. I was just looking for something cheap that would get the job done. And that begs the question, does the cheap price yield a cheap result? Well, in this video, I'm going to talk about the features of this machine, and then we'll poke and prod at it a little bit and see if we can answer that question. Now, before I get too far ahead of myself, I might want to explain why I chose that particular machine in the first place. There are a lot of options for things like spindle sanders, belt sanders, disc sanders, all of them oscillating in different ways. But what I really wanted was something that was a belt sander and an oscillating spindle sander. And when you're looking for that particular combination, there aren't a lot of options. Most of them look like that. And there are several different brand names that make one that look exactly like that. They're basically just rebranded. But this particular one was at least the least offensive to me in terms of color, and the price was right, so I ended up getting it. Now, normally I would handle things like inside curves and sweeping outside curves with things like rasps, files, spoke shaves, compass planes, those kinds of things. But there are certainly certain radii of inside curves in particular where I find things like a round bottom spoke shave to be kind of a pain in the butt. And I thought this might be something I can use to shape parts a little more quickly, particularly when I'm kind of doing it freehand, and also offers some dust collection when sanding, as opposed to using sandpaper, sanding by hand to shape things and having dust flying everywhere. So that's why I ended up with this particular one, and now we'll talk about its features. All right, so here it is. This is the Wen Belt and Spindle Sander Model 6524. I'll put a little still photo of the kind of statistics of the motor wattage and amperage and all that up on screen here. One of the first things you'll notice is that I have the belt up here and it has this big table on it. Pretty sizable table, which is nice. And that table is also adjustable, so you just loosen these knobs on the sides. There's a little spring tab at the bottom here that you push down with your thumb, and then you can adjust it to different angles. The angles it can adjust to have detents at 15, 22.5, 30 degrees, and 45 degrees. Now, are those angles accurate? I don't know. And the reason I don't know is because I don't care. If you're using a sander to achieve machine-like accuracy, to my mind, you've already done messed up. That said, when I tighten it down and put a straight edge on the top here, there appears to be kind of a high point, at least from this side and this side, right along this line right here. But when I put a square up to the belt, it looks just about perfectly square at this end, and at this end it's leaning out at the top just a little bit. So be aware of that if you're looking for more accuracy than I normally would from a machine like this. Now, the belt is of course interchangeable, just like you would with any other kind of belt sander. The belts that it uses are the 4x24. They're pretty easy to swap out. Let's see here, let's grab a pretty coarse one. Stick that on there, tighten it down. Now, when you run the machine, you would just adjust the belt on the rollers via this little knob here. So in that respect, it's a lot like a handheld belt sander. And the belt attaches to the machine via, there's a spindle that kind of goes through this and attaches via this knob. So I'm going to go ahead and pull this knob off. Go ahead and undo that. There's a little washer right here. Set those aside. Then the whole assembly just lifts right off of there like that. So that's what it looks like under there. It fits over this spindle, and there's these little tabs at the bottom that engage it with the drive at the bottom. And then when you want to swap this out for a spindle, here, I'm just going to spin it around. There's a spot located on the back of the machine where you would store these kinds of things. So you can just stick your belt back there, take this throat plate off of there. You can just drop the throat plate on like that. And you'll see there's onboard storage for all the things. So all the different throat plates are here. Your different size spindles are stored on the front. They come in 1/2 inch, 3/4 inch, 1 inch, 1.5 inch, and 2 inch. Almost all of these are a kind of a rubber sleeve that fits over this spindle here, like so. And then you would put a big old washer on that. And there's different size washers that come with it, some of which I've already managed to lose somehow. Tighten your knob down. That compresses the rubber sleeve and kind of bulges it out until it applies pressure to your different sanding drums here. And then you find the appropriate throat plate on the machine. Right now I'm putting the 2-inch on there and drop it on there. And then you want to hook up your dust collection. And your dust port's right here on the side. And here's one thing that really worked out in my favor. I keep my Festool CT, what is it, CT26E right here. I believe they call this the 27mm hose right here. That fits right inside of the dust port, press fit, just like that. That is awesome, because I've had all kinds of machines in days gone by, you know, like handheld machines and stuff like that, where the dust port on the machine never matched up with the hose for the vacuum that I had, and I had to try to find an adapter, but nobody would make one. And if I did find one, it didn't fit very well and it would fall off. The whole thing was just annoying. So if you have a Festool vacuum, you can kind of apply your yin to your yang here, your super expensive vacuum to your super cheap spindle sander, and then you have some pretty decent dust collection. That said, when I use it, it does tend to kick a lot of dust off to the side, especially when you're using the belt. The belt runs this way at the front. All your dust that doesn't manage to get picked up by the vacuum goes that away. So I'm not very comfortable using this machine without a dust mask for more than a few seconds. Now, full disclosure, when I got my machine, when it showed up, it came with an extra sanding drum, I think. No, it came with 2 of these 3/4 inch ones, and it was missing the 1-inch rubber sleeve. And so I looked in the manual, I called the number in there, I said, hey, I'm missing such and such, and they're like, give us your address, we'll send it out to you. And they did. So that worked out great. I wasn't really expecting to get customer service quite that good when I had to call a company like this, because they're not a company that has this like big reputation, right? At least in that one instance, I know, sample size of one, they really took care of me. So in a minute here, I'm going to run this so you can kind of see it in action. I want to put a little bit of a inside curve, so the slope will turn into a curve as it comes out here. I'm going to do that to both of these, and I want this to be a pretty wide diameter curve. So even in this case, I think I want to use the belt sander for this, not because I want to use the flat part of it, but because the diameter on the end of this belt sander, you can see, is a larger diameter than the largest spindle here. So this spindle, the largest one, is 2 inches. And if I had to measure this spindle on the end here, I'm guessing it'd be something that's more like 2.5, maybe. So I'm going to throw this belt right back on there and give it a go. So I'm just going to drop that in there like that. There. And where's my little washer? I just had that little washer. Here it is. We'll tighten this baby back down. Put that back where I got it. Stow away all my throat plates. Now, one thing I've become very much aware of when using this machine, first of all, you can see it's quite light. So in that respect, it's kind of easy to move around if you need to. If you don't have a permanent home for it, it's not so bad getting it out, moving it to a particular spot, and then putting it away again when you're done. That said, this machine, being in the budget category that it is, seems to have a lot of vibration to me. So if it's not tied down to your table in any way, shape, or form, it has a tendency to kind of vibrate and kind of dance away on you while you're trying to hold your parts to the machine. So what I discovered is that if I lined it up just right, I can actually clamp this down to this work table. This is a Festool MFT. If you have a similar kind of perforated worktop, you might be able to do this yourself, even if it's not the same brand name. So let me tighten that down, and then I'll put another one at this back corner here. So I have opposite corners clamped down to the table, and I have my dust collection attached. And so I just need to run the belt and see if it's adjusted properly via this little dial right here. Now when I adjust the belt on this, I want it such that when it's oscillating and it's at its highest point, I don't have, bare metal exposed down here where the belt can actually kind of come above the surface of the worktop. I want to come up just shy of that. So let's give that a go. All right, so I think I'm all set up. I got my belt set up, it's adjusted. I got it clamped down to the table. I got my vacuum hose hooked up to it, and this is plugged into the vacuum so that when I turn it on, the vacuum automatically turns on along with it. And like I said before, I am going to wear a dust mask for this because the dust collection is much better than it would be if I were hand sanding. It's still not good enough for me not to want to wear protection. So I'm gonna throw on a dust mask, and I'm going to freehand some curves into these parts that look visually pleasing to the eye so you can see it in action. It's not a torture test by any means, but I figure people want to see it actually running. So that was that. I got this little part all nice and shaped using the end of the belt there. You can see that most of the vibration is actually when I turn it on and off during actual use. It does still vibrate, but it's of a frequency that doesn't seem to cause me any trouble when I'm shaping my parts. And that's what's really important to me. Of course, if it's secured to the table, it won't go anywhere on account of that vibration either. Not too bad. And all I have left to do now is apply that same treatment to this other piece, and then maybe either work through the grits or go over this with like a card scraper. Now, there's one part that I almost forgot to mention that I'm not currently using. It's this little metal piece. It's got a little hole here for a screw to go into the top behind here, and a little tab on the bottom that fits into a slot on the back side of the table there, and you can see that functions as a stop. So when you have parts against the flat of this belt, this kind of keeps them from getting caught and flying off the end of the table. Now, I haven't really used it that much because if I have a good enough grip, it shouldn't matter. Also, in the instances that I have used it, with the vibration of the machine and just moving your part around, this tends to kind of mar the surface of the end of your workpiece. And if you're near a completed surface, that can mar it up, and then you have to deal with that. But that's what that little guy is for. I didn't want you to think that it wasn't included. It just sits on board on the back side of the machine. Now you might be asking, well, what do I do when I need belts and spindles? Are these things proprietary? And I don't think that they are. Now you can order them from the company. Here's a box of the 120 grit belts and spindles. They all come in the same box, like so. And you see they provide you with quite a few of them. So it's kind of not a bad deal. This is about 16 bucks for a box like this. I believe they come in 80, 120, and 240 grit, readily available on Amazon. And the belts themselves I know are not proprietary because they're a 4x24. That's the same size belt that my handheld Makita belt sander uses. So those you can get pretty much anywhere. The spindles, I'm not as sure. If you know the answer to that question, maybe you can leave a comment in the comment section. But yeah, each of these little sets of sleeves and belts runs you about 16 bucks and not too hard to get on Amazon. As for the machine itself, it's currently selling on Amazon for about $344, $345 or so, and it's available only through a couple of vendors, neither of which I've ever heard of before, which makes me think that economically something is afoot here behind the scenes. Because there's another version of this machine, it looks identical to it, by Triton that's available for $250 and has the exact same level of reviews. And it's basically just the same machine, it's just more orange than it is black, as opposed to more black than it is orange. So I'll leave a link in the description, what we call an affiliate link. If you were to click on that link to pick up that Triton version of this machine, a few dollars would get kicked back my way. And that's a way you can support the channel a little bit extra at no extra cost to you. So take a look at that link if you're curious about the machine. As far as my take on it, I've had it for quite a while. I've used it to shape all kinds of parts on the project I've been working on. And I've been happy with the results that I've gotten. I wasn't expecting miracles here because it's not a very expensive machine. It vibrates a little bit, so you do want to kind of attach it to whatever surface you're using it on so it doesn't rattle around and move off the table. The dust collection is okay. It's not great, but it's a heck of a lot better than hand sanding, I'll tell you that. And yeah, I get the results I want. So That is the When Oscillating Spindle and Belt Sander. Take a look at the Triton version if you're curious. We'll see you next time. Now if you like what you saw here, please hit like and subscribe. It would help me out a lot. Also hit the little bell icon if you want to be notified anytime I release a new video. And if you didn't like what you saw here, keep it to yourself, pal. Or watch one of my other videos. You might like one of those. Thank you for watching.